Well, good afternoon, everybody, and happy Friday. We're happy to have you here on today's session, Trust But Verify, an introduction to using AI and data analysis work. And we've got a perfect person here to walk you through it, and that's Brian Sims. So I'm thrilled to welcome him here today. For those of you who haven't met Brian before, he's an educator and training leader working at the intersection of project management and generative AI. With 15 years experience in education and a decade in project management, and the last 5 years fully immersed in AI. At graduate school, Brian leads curriculum and training for professionals across the government and private sector. If you've taken one of graduate school's AI courses or you have your eye on one, Brian has likely built it or is teaching it. Today, Brian tackles a tricky reality of working with AI. It can confidently give you wrong answers, fake citations, bad statistics, conclusions that fall apart. Over the next 60 minutes here, he'll show you a live hallucination demo, share some steps here to catch those errors, and also the goal, trust AI's speed while verifying its output. Brian, thank you so much, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Hi, everybody, and welcome. Yes, really glad to be with you. This is, as Amanda mentioned, a primer, an introduction to a larger class on AI for data analysis work. And I should mention too, we also have a smaller class too, the AI for data literacy, that touches on a lot of these same topics. It's a half-day course, so a little more digestible too than the full 2-day thing. But the topics that we'll talk about here, if you're interested in hearing any more of any of it, those are two good courses to maybe look at next. And I have a slide on that at the end, so I'll remind you. But yeah, welcome. Really glad to have you all here. Um, we will take the next hour to, I think, address a reality, of course, with working with AI. Obviously, AI is already here, but can it always be trusted? I mean, we've all seen the headlines, right, where sometimes people get in quite a bit of legal trouble or financial trouble from trusting but not verifying. So very topical, and glad to have you with us. So, if you've attended webinars with me before, you know I like to try to have some sort of fun theme or angle to it, and I think it's appropriate since we've got a trust but verify spin or theme for the webinar. Something that we do in a lot of those classes that I mentioned too. It's very detective-y, where you're auditing, you're looking, you're searching. So a theme through which, or a lens through which we'll approach this webinar today is you're now a detective. So we're going to be, I'll be leaning in a little bit to the Sherlock Holmes references, and as if we've got a case to crack here. So we'll grab your magnifying glass and notebook and things, and we'll talk about AI as if we're investigating a case. Thank you for the laughter. Yeah, try to have some fun with it. We do have some games and things in the courses that are like literally like let's be a detective. Let's try to spot the flaw. What evidence did the AI leave for us? So I think it's actually really an apt analogy, as hopefully you'll agree and appreciate throughout our part of the afternoon together. To start us off, the infamous Sherlock Holmes, as he said in A Scandal in Bohemia, 1891, it's a capital mistake to theorize before one has the data. And that probably needs not much explanation at all, but he was making the point, right, to very much in line with the theme of this webinar, that we shouldn't trust a conclusion until we have the data that backs it. So I think that's a good kind of opening tone setter from Sherlock Holmes for us. But yeah, so obviously we're addressing this because AI is already here every single week. I'm teaching AI classes and meeting students in the federal space and beyond who are working with AI in their day-to-day lives at work or at home, or if they're not actively working on it in their jobs, it's being evaluated. Copilot is coming, let's say. So AI is there. And even if you're not directly interfacing with it, it is certainly impacting our daily lives, and fraud detection, and making recommendations for applications and things that get submitted. So it's here. We're feeling the influence of it, whether whether we're directly or indirectly involved. So knowing a little bit more about how it works, if nothing else, is I think certainly beneficial. But it's absolutely here and presumably not going anywhere. Pardon me. As you have probably noticed yourself too, the real risk here, though, is since it's so pervasive and seems to only be getting more so, um, uh, it can it can and certainly is oftentimes wrong. And those wrong answers will live there as wrong answers unless somebody does something about it, right? It's funny, actually. I saw floating around the internet this week or the last couple of weeks that whole like Smokey the Bear, like, oh man, only me being able to prevent forest fires. Like, ooh, no wonder I'm so stressed out. In kind of a similar vein, right? If you don't stop the AI, if you don't check the AI, um, I think that's meaningful, right? Like if imagine if you were working with AI and doing some sort of analysis and you pass that on to another coworker, especially if you're not disclosing your use of AI, they're going to take this as gospel, as your work and move along with it and maybe make some decisions become of it or, because of it, or, it gets integrated into a presentation later, right? Um, People aren't necessarily checking AI's work, especially if you're not disclosing your use of AI, right? They couldn't possibly check its work. So, as someone who's interfacing with the AI, it really starts and ends with us. Excuse me, and that's really the theme of our webinar here today. Um, so, detectives, we'll move forward and look at what we're going to cover here in our lunch hour together. In our first section, we'll take a look at. Again, I'm being intentionally fun with it. The crime scene, we'll call it, right? We'll get the lay of the land. We'll talk a little bit about how AI works with data, and that understanding will, I'm sure, help you appreciate better than you already do why it hallucinates and how that comes to pass. So we'll take a look at the scene at first. Then, in the real meat of the webinar, towards the middle here, we'll talk actually, and if you've attended other webinars with me, I've alluded to the existence of this, but here's kind of the big reveal. In these classes that I mentioned, we have this seven-step verification checklist, and we won't, practice every one of these in our short time here together, but I'll at least expose you to the seven-step checklist. And I'll package it in three little clusters that'll hopefully make it really easy for you to remember. And then towards the end, we've got a little, dare I use the word, demo scenario to work through, and we'll kind of put this to practice with as much time as we have left, and that'll be our verdict passed on our experience here. So. Okay, so we'll get started taking a look at the scene, and we've got another quote here from Sherlock Holmes where he said to Watson, again in A Scandal in Bohemia, "You see, but you don't observe," which I thought again was telling for this first little module here, where we're talking about understanding what we're working with when we're working with AI. This was in a scene of that story where I think Sherlock Holmes mentions to Watson when he's going up or down stairs from his apartment. Hey, how many stairs do you have? How many steps are up there? Have you ever actually noticed? And Watson realizes he's never actually taken inventory of how many steps there are. And then Sherlock says this, see, you see, but you don't observe, right? You've walked past these steps 1,000 times, but you don't know actually how they work or how many there even are, things like that. So I thought that was kind of an interesting quote to pull out for that because it really relates to what we're about to talk about. Reading AI's answer is seeing, but verifying it and understanding how it got where it is really observing the AI, and so that's what we'll talk about in this section here. So let's meet our suspect. AI is very fluent. We've all probably worked with it at this point to varying degrees, I'm sure. And that's what brought you here. And you probably know it sounds right often, right? But it isn't always. It sounds very good. If you've taken classes with me or maybe been in other webinars, you know all the ins and outs or more of the ins and outs of how this works. but it isn't always correct. It is predicting the next plausible word based on everything that it's been trained on, right? If you remember from other webinars and things, we've looked at that AI pipeline. It's probabilistic, but not deterministic, right? It's making guesses, and we'll actually see how that works here in just a little bit. So a point to really drive home is it doesn't know what it's saying. It's again guessing. Um, if there's an area where it's unclear or doesn't find information or doesn't have enough data, that it's not going to tell you that. Like, oh, I couldn't, I'm not going to, continue any further here because I don't have, the correct data. It is there are some ways around this a little bit, but it will fill in the gaps with something else, as the slide says here, something else that sounds believable. We talk about this a lot too in the prompt engineering class, and it's why mastering the art of the prompt is such a usable skill too, by the way, right? Because any area, as I say often in class, that you leave uncovered, AI is going to do just that, right? It's going to guess. You didn't tell me what format you wanted this, so I'm going to give you bullet points since you didn't specify, or you didn't tell me what audience this was for, so I'm going to give you something really general, and so on. So there are three really common tells that give away when this is happening. And again, we'll dig a lot more into these over our time together. But to kind of cluster these, fabricated citations, which you may have seen yourself, just flat out wrong numbers. We'll talk more about that today. And false confidence, which is actually maybe the most transparent and most commonly accessed of these. So how it works. You've probably or perhaps heard the term tokens maybe when entering into discussions or having discussions about AI. I've certainly noticed in class, it seems like attendees and students in class are starting to ask more questions about tokens. It's becoming more in the common vernacular about AI. I think as people are starting to maybe get the bill for their AI services and noticing that things like usage and context window and all of that is dependent on tokens. This is a question that's coming up quite a bit in class these days. What are tokens? How does that work? And that sort of thing. So I wanted to actually, well, we'll talk about this a little bit, but I also want to, I'll move out into a demo environment here in a moment and show you. But on its surface, it is reading these things called tokens and not words. I kind of think of them like, how we will break words into syllables. Uh, it's the AI's equivalent of that. Little fragments, not entire words necessarily. And that tokenization drives how AI is able to understand what we're asking it. And it does its prediction, which again we'll see here in a demo here in a little bit, by guessing what the next token is likely to be, is statistically probable. So let me show you what I mean by both of these. First, I want to take us here, and anybody can get to any one of these. You just went out to Google, and I looked up tokenizer. I think Claude has a tokenizer. This is OpenAI's tokenizer, and you can type in specific words and see how many tokens that gets broken up into. A really common example, if you've been kind of paying attention to the AI space for a while, it's the models have gotten a lot better with this, but this may make a previous joke make a little bit more sense. When I type, say, the word strawberry, oops, whoa, 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 come now. Oh, it was down there. Let me go back. When I type the word strawberry into this tokenizer, that's one word, right? But as you'll see, and I'll zoom in here a little bit on my browser, the AI, ChatGPT 5, for example, sees that as three distinct bits. So one word to you and me, but three distinct tokens, they call it, to the AI. this, and the reason for bringing up the old kind of meme with AI, it used to come up a lot where like, pff, like good news. It's not like AI is going to take over anytime soon. You can ask it really simple questions like how many R's are in strawberry, and it's going to get that wrong. And this is why, because when you would query something like that, how many R's are in strawberry, the AI would look at it and see, all right, in this first section, ST, no R's present. In the second section, yes, yes, that has an R. And in this third uh, quadrant, yes, that also has an R. So to answer your question, I figured it out, cracked the case, two R's in strawberry. And there's recordings aplenty, or at least used to be, on YouTube and TikTok and things of people saying, "Really, ChatGPT? Are you sure? Only two R's in strawberry?" And it's like, "Yeah, no, I'm looking at it. STARW. Spell it all out, and yep, only two R's there." And again, months or years ago, this was taken as a, pff, see, AI is not taking over anytime soon. But this is how AI breaks things down. This is also, by the way, a good thing to know about the underpinnings of how AI works, because uh, you may notice too, like sometimes you'll give it a prompt like, I need exactly 100 words on why Brian gives the best webinars I've ever been to. And it'll write this paragraph talking about how awesome Brian is. But then when you actually do a word count, it's 98 or 102. Come on, AI, like get it together. How can you not, like, that's such a simple thing. But again, this is why it's kind of notorious. While it's good with numbers and math and coding, it's kind of notoriously bad with counting words. And again, this is why, because it doesn't see words, it doesn't think about words the same way that you and I do. It thinks about them as tokens. So this is a little bit of under the hood there to that first point of AI reading tokens, not words, fragments of things, not assessing their meaning individually anyway. The other thing I wanted to show that I think is really cool is this is another thing freely Googleable. Um, uh, this is a transformer explainer. This one here is intentionally simplistic, though it sure doesn't look it to take a glance. But this is how GPTs, if Chat GPT, or like Gemini is also built on a on a GPT. GPT, by the way, stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. And a lot of the LLMs that we interface with are built on this transformer architecture. And so here's a particular website called Transformer Explainer, which is actually really nice. It can walks you through the simple bits on how the transformer works and the underpinnings of AI. But the reason I'm bringing this up here is I wanted to demonstrate that second point that I made on that last slide that we looked at. It is predicting, since we just looked at tokens, it's predicting the next token by probability. Um, and it's guessing, right? So like here's data visualization empowers users to see, and as we can tell here, there's a 54.67% likelihood that the next word is visualize. There's a 20.87% chance that it's create, and so for C, and down the line. This is kind of a neat thing to play with. Let's see, actually, did this whole thing load? I know it has a model that it runs in the back. Federal employees are the best at, let's see what it says, what it would guess. It's kind of a cop-out answer. At what, blah, 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 blah. Or at their, pretty equal chance there, right? So it's just doing this guessing game of the capital of France is fill in the blank, right? It's doing this fill in the blank game at scale all the time. Now, again, this looks really complex, and it is. You can flip through in this particular website and really, really pop under the hood and see what's going on. You can increase or lower what it calls the temperature, which is basically its sensitivity for guessing and things. And what makes, by the way, the different models that are built on transformer architecture different is the proof it's in the little details, right? Gemini's temperature settings are distinct and different than OpenAI's, and so when new models come out and things, they do. There's a lot. This is actually a very simple way to look at it, but things that they kind of fine tune. Are things like this. That maybe it will turn the temperature up so that our appetite for variance is greater or lesser or whatever, right? They do all these little fine tunings on the model. So really cool kind of thing to play with. But I wanted to show you both of these things, right? To explain what a token is and how it works. And with that understanding, this is kind of that guessing game that it's continually playing. And again, with those things in mind, it reading tokens, so it's only seeing fragments, not whole meaning, and it's guessing, right? Plausibility doesn't mean it's true. That's the whole game, right? That's the whole engine there. There's no fact checker inside AI, right? When you ask it a prompt and it goes out and it does its research and comes back, that's it, right? This is it. It's now fully resting on you, which is why we need to do that verification, right? And it has been trained on a lot. It's probably a really, really good recommendation. I don't want to knock it, right? And certainly not knocking the use of AI or any particular model. But hopefully, by seeing a little bit of how it works under the hood, there you can appreciate. Well, this is how it's likely to hallucinate. If it's doing that word by word, phrase by phrase, token by token, that only gets bigger. When text tasks get more complex. So as we walk through the rest of this webinar here, we'll start looking at things. I'll use these stamps a few different times. Either something is confirmed, we looked into it and that really happened, or something is busted. We looked into it and it found out that it's actually completely fabricated, or the data actually contradicts it. I want to kind of isolate though here on this plausible one because I think this is what's most likely to come up when we're using AI. It sounds right, but I think yellow is a accurate color for that, right? Like, okay, maybe it's plausible, but we need to look at this a little bit more. And things that are clearly correct or clearly wrong are obviously clearly such. But most things are going to probably be plausible and need another look, and that's the danger zone, and that's where we'll isolate on this webinar, and you'll leave this webinar with at least an idea of some things that you can use to work your way through that. So first, too, there are a couple of ways that AI can meet your data, and I wanted to demonstrate some of those because, again, in class, this usually gets some oohs and ahs for people who haven't seen, especially the second bucket here. We're all probably pretty familiar with the first one, where you bring data to your AI. So this would be like going to ChatGPT and attaching a file, right? We've all probably done this before. Drag and drop it or hit the plus sign and attach something and ask your tool of choice to please do some basic analysis on this model. In fact, I won't even waste the energy on it, right? We've all probably seen that in practice before. So that's certainly one way. And it's great, right? You don't have to code anything. You don't have to know formulas necessarily. It can look at your spreadsheet and you can ask it questions and it can make some analysis for you. The other, arguably cooler way that AI can access your data is right within the platforms itself. And I know a lot of federal folks have maybe not been able to see this yet, or government folks. So I like to I'll bring this up now and show it a little bit. Here I'm in another dummy spreadsheet. These are fake numbers and things, so nothing being exposed here. But in certain tools like Excel or Google Sheets, for example, you can have AI embedded right in that platform. And it's really cool to see these work, so I will actually demonstrate it. And this particular account that I'm logged into, I have a Claude plugin and a ChatGPT plugin. I tend to use the Claude one quite a bit because it's just really good with numbers and hard, complex tasks. So here I might say, I'm making this up on the fly, but based on what you see, in this table, uh, create a new column for 2028 with projections for that year. And hopefully this is fairly quick. Let me go to Sonnet. That'll hopefully speed things up a little bit. And we'll just say, yeah, accept all edits and go. And while this is thinking, again, this is the Claude add-in. ChatGPT has an add-in as well. You may be more familiar too with Copilot, which I have available on another account that I have access to here. But that's really powerful and great to see. You don't have to drag it and drop it to a browser, for example. It's in the side panel and it can read and edit the cells if you allow it to, if you give it the edit access like I was just looking at. It can make changes for you. And in just a few minutes here, hopefully I'll talk long enough for us to get to see the end of this or how this works. um, but yeah, you don't really have to do anything necessarily. It makes it so darn easy, which is a kind of the trap. Yeah, let's see how this works. So we can see here it's thinking. Oh, it's starting to work. It's starting to make columns. Let me expand them. It's still rendering. That's awesome, right? Like it's doing the work. It's bringing over, yep, it's bringing over the formulas. I like that it's hard coded to not just bringing over numbers. Of course, if it wasn't doing anything that I wanted it to do, I could just, go back and in plain language ask it, don't hard code the numbers, bring over formulas or something. But yeah, it looks like it was able to do it. Luckily, I danced long enough to make it happen. In 2028, the 2028 column is live. Here's a summary, key assumptions extended. The same assumptions were also added. Oh, look, and it took the liberty of adding it to the assumptions tab and revenue model tab so that everything ties back cleanly. Like, right? Like this is the real power of AI, I think. This, especially if you're in the data space, like you can put in a prompt like that and go heat up your coffee and come back and it's done, right? So this is really awesome, right? But again, right to the theme of our webinar, how do you know it's actually true? So let's move along and get to that. So I want to show you too what a hallucination looks like. I've used this example in class sometimes too. This is interesting. I was working with some data recently where the AI said, "Oh yeah, there's a strong positive correlation between ad spend and customer satisfaction." And here's the source, by the way. Increasing ad spend reliably lifts customer satisfaction to, I think it was like 25% or something like that. And I don't know, it looked like really good, right? Out to multiple decimal points, and it gave me the source with a link to it, right? Like this is in practical terms what these things actually look like. Very confident, like one of those buckets that we looked at or talked about a little bit earlier. And it gave me real numbers, but as it turns out, like it was wrong. Like I busted this thing with just luckily a few minutes of looking. Didn't take very long, but ended up opening the spreadsheet myself, walking through the 7 steps, which we're about to talk about, or even actually just a couple of those 7 steps. It was very easy to actually see that this was fabricated. The AI said that it was this, but in reality, when I did the math by hand, it was this other number here. I also clicked the source, that link that it provided, and yes, it was a real report. Obviously, McKinsey's a real company, and they did do a retail study in the year that it had mentioned, but did a control F for that specific statistic, and it wasn't in there, so it had fabricated it. The important thing to take away from this, if you haven't seen this yourself yet, or you're just getting into AI, maybe, right? Like it's not going to be super obvious necessarily, right? You will get some that are very obvious. It'll say something like we talk about in some of our really early AI classes. Massive red flag is you seeing it saying something like, "Oh, recent studies have shown," and then there's no source and no statistics, no detail whatsoever, right? That's a massive red flag. And 10 times out of 10, you can back the AI in a corner in that scenario, and it'll say, "Oh yeah, no, there isn't really there isn't really a source. I was just using my probabilistic prediction, and this is about the time in a research paper where you humans typically say something, a transitional statement like this. So that's why I threw it in there. Yeah, no, there's really no studies. But it's not always going to be like that. Sometimes it will look like this, like it will actually give me numbers and sound really confident and actually cite sources too, but still be, completely wrong. So that's scary. And as Sherlock Holmes reminds us in another story, the Bascom Valley mystery from the same year, 1891, there's nothing more deceptive than an obvious fact, which I think is a very Sherlock Holmes turn of phrase. If you're familiar with Holmes and Arthur Conan Doyle, right? The context there is that the obvious looking explanation is the trap, right? A polished, confident AI answer is probably maybe the most dangerous because it looks so obviously correct, right? So I thought that was an apt quote to pull out from Holmes there. So there are three types of hallucinations, three kind of forms that it can generally take. Fabricated citations, like we've talked about a little bit already with that McKinsey study. I've seen it do this a lot too, especially in a government context, unfortunately. Um, and luckily, I suppose my story here that I was going to tell here is at this point now a couple of months old, but it's recent, where it didn't actually cite EO 8675309, but it'll fabricate executive orders and say, and again, luckily with a little bit of digging, it's easy to tell that that's not genuine. But it'll just, it certainly is fabricating citations. That's something we need to look out for. Giving wrong numbers, like I just mentioned, even, maybe out to multiple decimal points, looking for those of us who aren't fantastic at math or statistics, looking really plausible. Um, or I guess, again, just a false level of confidence. Uh, um, uh, just yeah, no caveats. It seems so certain. Doesn't It's again not inviting you to follow up or presenting any sort of weakness in its statement. So these are kind of the three forms that it can take. So to the operative question, what do we do about it? So we'll now look at our field kit as detectives, and we'll dive into those 7 steps, which again I'll put into 3 clusters that'll hopefully make it a little easier for everybody to remember. And here's another quote from Sherlock Holmes where he says, "Data, data, data. I can't make bricks without the clay." This was in the context of like Watson was asking for analysis, but Holmes said, "I don't have enough information yet." So he said, "We need to verify before I can make an actual assessment." So this part of our webinar will walk us through that part. So here's these clusters, the steps as clusters. And again, we'll walk through these a little bit more over the next several minutes. But they are 7 steps. The first cluster is trusting the numbers. And are they even real? This is the easiest bit, right? That's why they come first. So I'd recommend when you get an analysis from AI, this is after you've done all your pre-analysis work, and all that is covered in a lot more detail in the classes, by the way. But we've done all that proper work up front, and we've done our analysis, and AI is starting to tell us what to do. Now what? This is when this checklist comes into play. Pardon me. That first sanity check, right? Actually, you know what? I'm not going to go into a ton of detail here because we're going to do this on the subsequent slides. But the trusting the numbers is that first cluster. The second is the method. How did it do its analysis? Was it really the right way? Again, we'll dig into that a little bit more in some upcoming slides. And then its conclusion. Are there ways you can challenge the AI or should challenge the AI to make sure that the conclusion that it reached, maybe the numbers hold up and the method that it used was sound, but is the conclusion actually the conclusion that you should walk away from, and kind of working with AI to figure that out. Oh, and I do see, let's see, we do have a question. Oh, good. Glad people liking the Sherlock Holmes stuff. um, Oh, and I do want to note here, this will come up a few times, but this I think is a really good takeaway from the class and from this webinar, that not everything needs all 7 steps either. So if this is starting to sound like homework, um, fear not, right? Some things, as you'll appreciate as we walk through this more, you may not even make it to all 7, first of all, right? Because it gets stopped at number 1 or number 2. So, you don't have to go all the way there. But also, right, not every task needs all 7, as again, you'll presumably appreciate as we walk through them further. So for that first cluster, this is again just trusting the numbers, and luckily I think they're named appropriately, so you can probably guess at what they are. But the first step is just a sanity check. Um, uh, Very, very familiar to all of us, right? If AI says something that sounds really outlandish, like on the slide here, we've got an example. Oh, yeah, that really small outfit, that really small department with like one person in it. Yeah, they're beating everybody. Yeah, by like a wide, wide margin, too. Um, hmm, I mean, oh, maybe that's a total rock star over there, but that doesn't really pass the sniff test, right? So sanity check, right? Just does it even make sense? Actually read about it, actually read it and think on it for a second, which a remarkable amount of AI analysis gets caught in just this step. Which, as we talk about in some other AI classes, is a real risk when you start talking, AI as leaders and AI from a governance perspective and those types of things. Like it can be very tempting to just start rubber stamping stuff because man, the AI is so right and it looks so good. Um, Step one will really catch a lot of stuff. Just actually read it, actually think about it for a second. Does this even make sense? Step two, spot checking the numbers. Again, might feel a little bit like homework to some of us who aren't native Excel users or really good with math, but unquestionably worth your time. Okay, cool. You said we all can easily do averages, right? That's in one of the easily selectable functions or counts or things from Excel. Doesn't You don't have to be an Excel wizard to know how to do those types of things. So just crack open the actual workbook and check a couple of things. I have, again, this is why I put it in the checklist, caught a noticeable amount of items right here in step number 2, where it says, yeah, okay, looking at this, it's thousands of rows of data, so it's a lot, and the average is whatever. And then let me just look. I'll put it in Excel and run average myself and get a different number. Maybe the AI is right, but maybe it's not. And I at least want to understand why. Oh, may turn out that, oh, it removed duplicates or did some other great thing that it totally should have done. But about half and half, at least in my experience, sometimes it's a really good reason for doing what it did. Sometimes it isn't. So again, a remarkable amount of stuff you'll find can be caught just in these first 2 steps, the sanity check and just do a little spot checking. Oh, and same too, before I move on with the citations, right? Like I talked about too, right? And again, like just actually click the link. And is it a legitimate one, right? If it took you out to Brian's blog, okay, I don't trust you. Run it again. Using only, .gov sources or something like that, or actually, doing a control F within the citation, making sure that what it says is there is in fact actually there. So those are those first 2 steps. The second cluster is the method, right? And this I think is particularly useful because, again, not everybody who's working with data is a data analyst, or you're asked to prepare something for a report, and I don't know, like it's using all these fancy words and statistical terms, and like I don't know what that stuff means, right? That may be you, right? Um, and that's okay. Luckily, one of the great equalizers in this equation is your AI assistant, right? They're there to help you, and they're not judging you for not remembering what the difference between mean, median, and mode, right? Like you maybe haven't touched this stuff since high school or whatever, right? So it's okay to ask your AI these questions, and it'll work through it with you. But so yeah, so step 3 here, checking the method. Is this the right technique for the data? Maybe it used a particular method that, well, I understand, that's a very common thing. Maybe your AI is even observing, hey, the last time we looked at data, you asked me for averages, so I'm just doing that again because that seems to be a thing you like to do, Brian. But this is a good kind of challenge step. Why did you show me the median? Why not something else, right? This data is really skewed towards the left, so an average isn't really super helpful here, right? And that may and usually does, in fact, probably, if I can use that word, will shake your AI loose, and it'll admit something like, "Oh, I don't know, I just thought you liked averages. That's usually what you ask for, or whatever," right? So just asking it something simple like, "Why did you pick this particular method? Are there alternatives? Walk me through your thinking process here." So challenging it on the method that it selected. Uh, this next one is massive and goes back to some of the prompt conversation that I brought up a little bit earlier too, right? Like where you have not given your AI information, again, it's just going to guess. And almost certainly you know things or there are things at play that the AI doesn't have access to or doesn't know, right? And that can be extremely important, right? So think about that is, I guess, sort of the short answer for the sake of time. What might your AI not know about what's happening here? And that could potentially be, completely change its recommendation. So these are great here a lot of things, in fact, with my experience with using AI for data analytics type work, don't make it past this second cluster because so often it has picked the wrong method, or once I start giving it some additional context, that's a complete game changer. And an AI, is a very agreeable type of tool, and it'll usually say something like, "Oh, that changes everything," or "That with that additional information, that's a game changer," or whatever. So I can't stress enough the utility of walking through these 7 steps, even in the order that they're presented. The last cluster there, if you can even make it this far with it, because I bet you'll catch something in those first four, is all about its conclusion. Okay, maybe it passed the cluster one and cluster two, but here's a good list of things to be thinking about if it does happen to make it through those first two stage gates. Challenging your AI. Are there alternatives for this conclusion? Are there other explanations possible that could explain what's going on here? As the slide points out, I like that we use that phrasing here. It forces the AI past its first assumption or its first story and fights against its bias. What else could be happening here? Think of this another way. Challenge yourself. You come up with 3 alternatives, however you want to put it, can be extremely illuminating. Step six, excuse me, is asking it to test the opposite. What evidence would suggest that this isn't the case? And again, like the slide aptly says, if it can't argue the opposite convincingly, then that's significant. I used to have a boss who would say, if an idea can't stand up to aggressive attack, it's a weak idea. And I think that obviously sticks with me because here, 20 some years later or whatever, I'm still repeating it, right? But I think that's the embodiment of step 6 here, right? Challenge yourself. Think of it a different way, and it should work from all angles. If it doesn't, I'm really suspect. And lastly, if you can make it this far, and it rarely does, because this is a pretty tried and true validation checklist here, is just asking for a second opinion. And maybe asking your same AI tool, I like what you did here. Can you just run it again? And again, that remarkably or interestingly will catch a lot of issues. Just asking it to take a look I use with fresh eyes. I use that as a phrase a lot. and it seems to work. So I assume that does something. But take a look at, all right, now we've reached this. I think we're ready to go, but I'm about to submit this to leadership or whatever, even if I'm actually not. I tell the AI that that's what I'm going to do. Take one last pass at this with fresh eyes. Have we left any stone unturned here? Anything else we haven't thought about that we haven't covered in our current line of questioning? And just asking it that is maybe enough. Or what we talk about in a lot of classes too, put the thing in another tool, especially if it's a really, really critical task, right? Run that same path in another tool. You were doing it in Claude, do it in ChatGPT. You were doing it in Grok, do it in Copilot, vice versa, those types of things. If you reach the same answer in multiple tools, that should really build your confidence, right? And disagreement in the tools is, as it says on the slide again, a gift, right? Because then you can have now we're really having a conversation and we're starting to work as a team, you and your AI assistants to figure out what's really at play here. And again, this is so empowering because you don't necessarily have to be a data analyst or a statistician to be part of this conversation now, right? You can have yourself and your own knowledge of the organization and what's going on, and multiple tools helping you sort through this. So another thing I want to leave you with, I know we're in our closing 15 minutes of the webinar, is this very useful tip. Is this notion of a AI traceability document. We talk about this in both of the data-driven classes. This is a really great tool I can't recommend enough, especially for data analysis type work. So what it is, and it can be extremely simple in the class, in the larger class, we have a template and some other cool things you can use, other little interactive tools, but it doesn't have to be fancy. It can be, on Notepad or in a Word document or something. It's a running record of your AI assisted work. So something like, what did you ask? Which tool did you use? What was your method? What did you have to verify? What did you change? Did you take it for face value? Kind of what happened? Just tell me the story, right? Excuse me. Why I particularly like this is for that first, actually, it's already there in the last bullet point. It buys you reproducibility because, gosh, how many times have you been in this scenario? I know I certainly have, where, hey, Brian, you know that thing you did for us last quarter or last year or whenever, back in October? That's awesome. And I've got a meeting coming up. Can you do that again? Would you be able to reproduce that? And how often have I been before AI traceability documentation was a notion, sure, right on top of that. And then, darn it, I've got to now reverse engineer the thing, right? As I say in class a lot, I think future you will thank you for having the forethought to say, which is so much of project management too, by the way, right? Someone should write this down. What did we do? What was it like? Just give notes to whether it's future me or the next employee to pick this up. Just writing it down. It's also great for accountability, and as the slide says here too, you've now got an audit trail. So if when your the boss or leadership or the public says, how did you reach this conclusion? I think that's great again for accountability and for covering your six, right? That like, well, I can show you exactly how I got it. This is what I did, and this is the date I did it, and maybe the models changed, but this was my path. This was the walk that I walked. We have another Sherlock Holmes quote here. It says, when you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. Probably Holmes' signature maxim there. But telling us that a trustworthy verdict comes from ruling out the alternatives, which again, if you've gone through this checklist, you will have done. Don't accept the first story, right? This is kind of the whole discipline of this webinar. So very apt quote from Sherlock Holmes here. So now we've kind of let's crack the case, at least conceptually here. I know you have access to the QA area. Feel free to drop something in the QA area or the chat if you'd like. But I've got a little scenario for you. And I know we haven't seen the data. I know there's probably a bazillion other questions you could ask, but just thinking through what we've talked about so far, what would you make of this? If you were working with AI and it gave you a result, like you say you had uploaded some, regional sales data or performance data or something, and it says, oh, well, this, particular region outperforms every other region. They have the highest sales across the board. This pattern is clear and consistent. So, hey, what I would recommend is move all your marketing towards that region, and we're going to maximize the return. So again, with our detective hat on, it's semi-polished. I could maybe think of some arguments. It certainly sounds confident. It's specific. I have a clear thing that I should do, I think, but I agree. Like it does feel like something is a little off here. Um, I'm got my eye on the chat in the QA area. What do you think? What do you think confirmed? Like, yeah, that's probably right. No more information needed in this instance. Nope, totally busted. We have enough information here to say this is totally wrong. Or I don't know, plausible. We'd probably have to verify, right? Yeah, exactly. I'm noticing in the chat you guys are all over it, and it's intentionally an easier example, but great. You're getting it, obviously, right? We don't have to know statistics, right? To know that if you were to get a judgment like that out of AI, that's not enough, right? You have so many more questions, and you maybe didn't even have to go through the whole webinar to get to that, right? I think this would easily have stopped at checklist item 1 or 2, right? Sanity check, or like, whoa, move all my money to this region. Like people are saying in the chat here, you gave me no statistics. You didn't tell me how you did the analysis. You walk me through how you got that conclusion. Yeah, I totally agree. Maybe it's genuinely right. It may be true, right? We don't have enough data. For the sake of time, I'm not showing you the sheet and stuff. But that recommendation isn't earned by that analysis, right? It's plausible, but it should lead us to dig a little bit further, right? While it might, again, be correct, it didn't earn that designation yet, right? We've got to at least go through some of the steps. Again, like it says here, maybe even just the first two, right? Um, uh, but but we would certainly want to investigate. So absolutely great answers in the chat and in the Q&A area. You all passed the test. Those of you who answered, that's wonderful, right? And a reminder here too, right? I hope this is clear. I hope you walk away from this webinar with this in mind, that right, not every data analysis or interaction with AI is going to need all seven, right? Because like we can see here, it usually won't even make it that far, right? Like this it doesn't even pass sanity check. I'm not about to move all my money over here on that really flimsy uh, um, re analysis, right? There's so many open questions there. So wonderful, great. Okay, so left you with a couple of things, hopefully really useful. Again, this is a teaser of much more. But we talked three patterns of AI hallucination, fabricated citations, just flat out wrong numbers, and confidence that is, as it turns out, false, right? Those are the three big things to look for. Fabricated citations, numbers just being wrong, and confidence, false confidence. Remember, we had that 7-step checklist. Seven is a lot of things to remember. I have a bad memory. I'll be the first to admit that. But we did talk about, right, those three clusters, right? So I hope that's helpful. Think of, does it pass the sanity check? Think about the method, and does it really warrant the conclusion? 1, 2, 3. And remember that there's potentially more involved in that, but those are kind of the three buckets that all fits into. Um, and using this will help you catch subtle errors, as the slide says, that would survive a casual read. We talk about this more in the class, but things like Simpson's paradox, where it makes sense through certain lenses, but then through others, it doesn't. And unless you looked at it through those particular lenses and for these particular subgroups, and really dug down into it, you would never get that sort of analysis, right? So again, a lot more on that in the class. And we got some little stamps. Feel free to use those as much as you like, of confirmed, busted, or plausible, right? And we know we you have to have the evidence, right, to actually proceed with an AI's recommendation, and keeping that AI traceability document, that I made mention of, which again you can start very simply today. You don't need the templates and other resources that come in the course. You can start simply today, writing down just what did I do, what happened, remind future me or a colleague of the process that we went through here. So if you want to do the full investigation, as we mentioned, the full investigation is this AI for data analytics class. We do the real work with AI end to end, where we clean data using AI, explore the data using a particular framework for that, do the analysis, work with AI to help us visualize it and make some predictions and reporting. And this verification is just a piece of that 2 day class. So it's really cool. We have a lot of fun in there. And we there's a lot of interactivity and activities and those sorts of things. It all comes with data sets, but something that I particularly like about this class, and where tear to my eye a little bit, where it's usually the most impactful, honestly, is when people bring their own data sets, either from work, if that's something that they are able to bring, or maybe from home. I've seen some students do that. Well, like, here's our bills. I've been trying to, figure out, a better system for this. And, this class is a great opportunity this can be my use case on figuring all this out or whatever, right? And people walk out of the class. I've had people cry in class before that, like, this was such an administrative burden. But now with the help of AI and the things we talked about in this class, like, this is going to be so much easier now. Like, thank you, AI, in this experience, for these hours of my life back. So yeah, I don't know. It's a really, really cool class. I'm very proud of. There's lots of tools in it as well. I won't belabor that any further. But the full course is AI 7. That's the code, and that class, and there's many more AI classes at graduateschool.edu/AI. So if you are interested in more AI and data type classes, or AI and Excel classes, because if you're interested in those sorts of things, you're here. I assume maybe you are. Those classes are also available, plus just a bunch of other AI classes for different topic areas and in and outside of government. So a lot of cool stuff to see there. So I know we're about at time. That's a case closed, right? I hope you recall and remember, trust, but do verify, right? AI is a fantastic tool, obviously, but it just has to be checked. And I hope now, that through seeing how it does the tokenizing and how it does the guessing, it's probabilistic, not deterministic. I hope appreciate now more than ever, that you have to check it, right? You have to be able to defend its analysis. So thank you so much for being with me today. Thank you for investigating, being a detective with me, and suffering my Sherlock Holmes quotes and all that. And with that, I'll leave us with one last Sherlock Holmes quote. He says, "Education never ends, Watson. It's a series of lessons, with the greatest for the last." So I hope that is a natural bridge to you continuing your education. It's a series of lessons. Let's all go forward and do that. And with experimenting with AI, and maybe even some classes with us. And I hope to see you in there if possible. I know we've just got like a minute left. But if anybody has a quick question you want to throw in the chat, I'll try to take a look at that. But otherwise, thank you all so much for spending your lunch hour with me today. And again, I hope to see you in class here really soon. Best of luck. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.